Hello, friend. Welcome to the Happy Family Club. We're delighted to have you join us. Our mission is to help you have a happier, stronger family. We do that by bringing you the world's greatest experts in family, marriage, parenting, and relationships. We interview them to discover their secrets, their strategies, their techniques, and bring them to you so that you can cherry pick exactly what you need right now to have more success and more joy in your family.
And if you enjoy this interview, we encourage you to share it with your friends and your family, and come on to the happyfamilyclub.com and see if you can find more information that's going to help you and your family be happier.
Again, thanks so much for joining us. Enjoy the interview. Hello, everybody. Welcome again to the Happy Family Club podcast. We are so honored and delighted to have Dr. Scott Turansky here with us today. And actually, I'm going to let Margie tell a little bit about you, Scott. And actually, I forgot to ask you if you go by Dr. Scott, Dr. Turansky, Scott, Grandpa. I think you go by all those at some point, right?
I do. Scott is fine most of the time when I'm working with families professionally. Sometimes I like the kids to say Dr. Scott, but other than that, it's whatever works.
Beautiful. Okay, good. So why don't you go ahead and introduce our good buddy, Dr. Scott.
Dr. Scott. He is a great man. We've had a wonderful time getting to know him. He's a husband, a father, a pastor, a parenting expert.
Professor.
He's a professor, yes, and author. Actually, his wife is an author too. He and his wife, Carrie, are the parents of 5 children and 11 grandchildren. That's amazing. Cool. He graduated from Portland State University, obviously, in Oregon there, with a BA in speech communication. And then he got 2 masters from Western Seminary, where one was in divinity and the other in theology. Is that right, Scott? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. And I love this part. Can I mention this?
Yeah, I love this.
If I remember reading right, you took all the Bible classes twice, and then you took some 30 plus hours in Hebrew or Greek, and then 30 plus hours in the other one, so you could study the Bible in original languages, right?
That's right. I knew where I was going. I knew I was going to be a pastor, and I felt like taking those Bible courses from additional teachers would be helpful, and then studying the languages would be important for the depth I needed to preach the sermons and do the research in God's word that I needed to do.
And what I love about that, and so of course we'll get into this more in a minute. I'll let you finish your introduction, but what I love about that is that also gave you such an incredible depth that you're using now with parents and helping them with their children, right? Because you are so immersed in God's word and so have such a great understanding of what God has taught and what Christ has taught. It's just amazing. So anyway, keep going. Finish up. There's more accolades to put on Dr. Scott. So keep going, babe.
Well, he also earned a doctorate of ministry in organizational management and strategic planning. Is that right?
That's correct.
Theological Seminary. That's amazing. Doctor of ministry there. And he's the co-founder of Biblical Parenting and the podcast that we all love called Parenting is Heart Work. Yeah. So we're very excited to chat with you today and find out your insights into happier families.
Thank you, Margie. It's good to be with you folks.
It is good. On an interesting note, I lived in the Netherlands as a missionary for a couple of years. And I know your co-host is Dutch on that podcast.
That's right. She's Elena Spetsvat. She's from the Netherlands. And so we get together by, I think it's Zoom every week and every other week and record the podcasts that come out on the Parenting's Heart Work podcast.
Well, I'd love to meet her some point and swap stories about the Netherlands. Love that country and those people. It's amazing.
So great.
So, we have a burning question that we'd like to ask, given your experience and background. I think the one other thing that we didn't mention is that you also do parenting coaching and have the opportunity to work with not only in your ministry in your church, but also one-on-one with parents. So you really have been embedded into, I don't know if we call it the battlefield of, creating successful families, because there is a bit of a war going on out there against families. And you're right in the heart of helping parents and children have great tools and resources. So we're going to dig into some of that. And I'd really like to ask the question in just a minute about what you see as a key principle to create greater family happiness. And before we do that, though, I'd love to dive into some of your backstory, because I did read a little bit about how you started your ministry with your dad in Hawaii, And then you now have created an incredibly successful online platform with biblical parenting, and you've got a number of books. So tell us a little bit about how you came to where you're at right now and some of the backstory. What led you to this incredible ministry?
I've had a real interest in parenting for a long time. I grew up in a Christian home. My parents did a good job in what they were doing. They passed the faith on to me and my siblings, and just enjoyed the benefits of being part of the church. My father encouraged me in the church in so many ways, so that when I graduated from seminary, I went and pastored the church with my dad. Wow. Felt like that was a privilege, and learned a lot from him. And in those first 8 years of ministry, while I was with my dad, I started doing parenting seminars to the community. My son was only 1 year old, but I got together with the local pediatrician and the Christian psychologist in our community, and we offered this seminar from 3 different experts in the community, and we had this great attendance. People were really interested in it. So then I moved away from Hawaii. That's where my first church was.
Yeah.
And moved to New Jersey. And I started in another church, and right away I met Joanne Miller, who's a pediatric nurse. And again, I wanted this multi-dimensional presentation of parenting, not just one person. So Joanne worked with me. She actually attended some initial parenting groups offered to the community. She was given feedback and information. I think you could add this. I said, well, why don't you do some teaching in the next one? So she did. And over time, then she and I have authored 15 books on parenting, and we've taught numerous seminars all across the United States, speaking at conferences and so on. So her involvement has been just a treasure, because she brings the perspective of a mom, perspective of a pediatric nurse, and all of that just broadens the whole depth of our ministry. So I really appreciate her. And then we've been teaching and writing ever since. So that's the National Center for Biblical Parenting. And then sometime, well, it must have been about 10 years ago, Concordia came to me and said, hey, would you take your books, put them into a class, and we'll run your class? And so I said, yeah, okay, I'll take 4 of the books. We'll use them as textbooks. And so out of that, then I teach at the university. And I've taken that material, not only use it at the university, but I teach it through the National Center for Biblical Parenting to allow other people to become coaches. And I've trained over 500 coaches now, individually with parents, one-on-one, creating individualized, personalized programs for parents. And that's going very well. Very excited about that. In fact, my work at Concordia is expanding. Out of the university, they've chosen 10 courses to offer in China. And one of those courses is my course. So I require that every person who goes through my course, either at Concordia or through the National Center for Biblical Parenting, work with a parent while I am teaching them. So it's very practical. I want them to see God's grace pass through them to another family, and they're just pumped. I'm training some right now, and they just, all the things that are coming through, people are going, wow, this is so great. We got to get the word out.
Wonderful.
And what an incredible miracle. It's like the hand of the Lord is reaching out and allowing you to push that into so many areas, including China, which is just incredible outreach and incredible impact.
It is really special for us to be in China. And every time I train, I've got people from all kinds of countries around the world. So right now I've got someone from Singapore and another person from Nigeria in the training. But I've trained people from all number of places in Africa and Southeast Asia and South America, and of course Canada and Mexico and Europe. So I've got a lot of trainers or counselors or coaches that can work with families, and it's just growing, and I'm very excited about that.
That's amazing. Well, I don't know what the intake process there is, but I would imagine that there are some of our listeners that might be, oh, wow, I can get trained by this guy and figure out how to coach. So maybe later we can talk about how to direct them into some of your programs, because we need more people who are in the homes, coaching, helping, parenting. And I think especially since a lot of parents, I grew up in a rather interesting environment. Margie grew up in what you would consider an ideal home. And so Margie's taught me, well, between God and Margie, that's how I've learned how to parent, right?
And our 11 children.
Yeah. So
what a blessing.
it is a great blessing. So what, I just am curious, sort of even stepping further back, what was the original kernel that caused you to be so passionate about parenting? I mean, I love the works that you've done, but what's your kind of driving why behind that?
When I was in my first church, I'm studying God's word. I'm seeing principles that apply to the family. And during those 8 years where I was working with my dad in Hawaii, I also directed the preschool that was there. And I saw the need that parents have. And I saw how we were doing things in the preschool in some ways, and they were not carrying the same message home. And so if we could train the parents, we could do some valuable things. And then over time, then that grew into this passion that parents are the best counselors for their children. They are the best trainers for their children if they have a good plan. So my goal is to empower parents. I believe that parents are the best trainers, and many parents call our office and they say things like, my son's been in counseling for a year. He's 10 years old with anger issues, or my daughter's been in play therapy. She's 6 years old dealing with her issues. And my question's always the same. Well, so what have you learned here? And I get the continual responses. I don't know, first of all, because it's in private. And secondly, I don't know that we're making that much progress. And then they get into our program, and within a couple of weeks, they're already seeing these changes and they can't believe what's happening. So it's just this real passion that we have to train parents and empower them, because that's who will bless the children. Our end users are children. We work with parents to bless those.
And it's so true. I mean, God obviously would not have created the family structure the way that it is if parents were not ordained and designed to be those primary counselors and that influence force.
That's right.
And I love how you have so accurately identified that and then empowered those parents. So it's really cool, really amazing.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for that passion, and thank you for doing that work. And it sounds like just thousands of parents around the world have so been blessed from it. And as you said, the end user, the child, right?
The children, yes.
Those children have been
impacted.
So let's talk for just a minute about what you see is a key. I mean, you could probably share a lot of stuff, but I'd love to focus in on what you see as a key principle to greater family happiness. And then we'll talk about some practical stuff.
Okay, so I think that parents, as they're working with children, must take on this attitude of discipleship with their kids. They're moving children from what we would say is from point A to point B.
Yeah.
This child, just like God works with us,
yeah.
He moves us in the sanctification process from point A to point B. We need to have the same attitude with our children to move them from point A to point B. That means these children are going to grow in character and spiritual development. They're going to develop some greater ability to relate to themselves emotionally, but also to deal with other people. It's so strategic. If parents have that mentality, then they can increase closeness, which is often their goal, reduce tension, which is often the problem in the home, and they focus on raising these disciples for Christ. And so I think that happiness is elusive, and sometimes parents believe that pleasure is the goal of childhood. And so let's give our kids all kinds of things. Let's help them to be happy, and that's going to contribute to their self-esteem. But unfortunately, if we overemphasize pleasure in a child's life, then they have a hard time handling disappointment because they just don't get what they want. And disappointment is a pervasive problem. That we see. Kids don't know how to handle the disappointments of life. If we have a different mentality, this training mentality with children, then pleasure becomes a byproduct of a mission-oriented view of life. That is the best way to view pleasure. It is a byproduct, but it can't be the goal of any of our lives. Otherwise, we find ourselves addicted. So here's what happens. If you emphasize pleasure over and over again, the end result is addiction. I want more video games. I want more food. I want more money, or whatever it is, because that's bringing me happiness. We've got to change the mentality, get our whole hearts focused on the Lord, following him, doing what's right, and pleasure is a byproduct.
Yeah. So I agree. Margie and I agree with 100%. I'm not sure we've ever articulated it quite like that. We've talked before about, oftentimes we see in youth organizations and church organizations that we try to compete with the world and just entertain, just raw entertainment. Like, let's make this super fun activity. And not that there's anything bad with that, but Margie's always said, let's give them something they can't get anywhere else. Let's give them the Spirit. Let's give them closeness to God. Let's get them centered on Christ. And that will produce the joy they're looking for, but it'll produce in a way that doesn't create pain and deficits and problems. And I think that's exactly what you're saying. It's awesome.
It is. You're right.
So how have you gone about? I mean, again, you've got multiple books on this, but I'd love to pin down 2 or 3 very practical ways that we can get that shift away from the entertainment, away from the pleasure, and into that, heart-centered, Christ-centered experience, so that they're actually mission-focused and not entertainment-focused. What are some practical things parents can do to make that shift?
In our book, Parenting is Heart Work.
Mm-hmm.
That's not hard work, heart work.
Hard work.
Mm-hmm.
Heart work. Then in that book, we talk about what the heart is. Now, that book's being used in 3 seminaries now because it's a biblical study of the heart. 750 times the word heart is used, and it gives parents practical ideas of how to apply that. So I take my theological studies, and that's what we do with all of our books. We do the research first. What does it mean to follow this particular idea through the scriptures? And then we look for practical ways to apply that. So Parenting's Heart Work is a strategic book to help parents understand what that looks like. Now, as we were doing this study of 750 times the word heart is used in the Bible, we put together Parenting's Heart Work. We had this whole group of verses left over that had to do with the conscience. So we created Parenting's Heart Work 2, but we couldn't name it that. We called it Motivate Your Child, which is about building internal motivation inside of a child. So that pair of books are strategic. Motivate Your Child's about building internal motivation, which comes from the heart, and it really counters this problem that many parents have, and that is they use reward punishment to move children along in their lives. If we use behavior modification or the reward punishment model to bring about change, then what we're saying to a child is, I'll give you what you want if you do what I say. We're appealing to the selfishness in a child, and in the end result is that children ask the wrong questions in life. They start asking the question, what's the minimum I need to do to get my reward? Or are you going to pay me for that?
Yeah.
So those questions that children grow up with lead to an attitude of entitlement or victim mentality. We've got to focus on the heart, and so moving our children in that direction helps them greatly.
Incredible.
Love it.
So what Margie is a master at least an aspect of this. Years ago, she started, instead of having Christmas lists of what the children wanted, she started helping them to see, okay, what are you going to give and how are you going to serve people at this time in order to honor Christ? And so they went from this attitude of, oh, what am I going to get and what am I going to benefit? Instead, how am I going to serve and give and lift other people? And the impact has been unbelievable on our family, Scott. So I just say that because what you're talking about here is, we're proof in the pudding, and that's confirmation about what it is.
That's great. That is such a valuable concept because children do focus on themselves. God has a concept he calls honor.
Yeah.
And so as we studied honor in the Bible, then we came up with a book about that. But the book's called Say Goodbye to Whining, Complaining, and Bad Attitudes in You and Your Kids. The idea here is that for every form of selfishness, there's an honor-based solution. So as you implement this kind of an idea with families, that children need to get out of their selfish mentality into this sense of giving and supporting and contributing to life, great things happen. And so, yeah, I love that concept of what you're doing about Christmas time.
So let's talk for just a minute. You talked about, this motivation needs to be this internal, process and this heart focused process. So let's talk about a scenario here that I see all the time. And that is, a parent will come to Margie and I, and they'll say, oh, my kid's got to get up for school, for seminary, for church, for fill in the blank, whatever it is that they're supposed to, quote unquote, be doing. And I got to go in, and I got to wake them up 5 times, and I got to drag them into the kitchen. I got to remember their books, and then I got to drive on a thing. And I'm just slogging this kid all the way around. Like, what do I do? So give us some insight on like a device for a parent like that to shift that child. Because that child obviously is functioning under an external punishment compulsion environment that the parent has set up. No judgment or disrespect to the parent, right? Most of the time they've done it totally unknowingly. They didn't know anything else. So your advice or insights on getting them to shift from, moving that child from that external compulsion environment to that internal motivation environment.
All right, so let's just take this into adulthood just for a moment, because there's a lot of adults who wait till the pressure builds up, the external pressure. We call it procrastination. They wait till the late fee's about to happen, or they're going to get penalized. And so we're going to try to solve this problem when children are a lot younger, so that they don't have the same problem as adults. So yes, in that book, Motivate Your Child, we're really talking about the conscience and strengthening the conscience. The word used 30 times in the New Testament, but the concept is taught throughout the Bible.
Yeah.
Let's just take the one aspect of the conscience, and that is a sense of obligation. When parents teach children and train them with a sense of obligation, then children start saying to themselves, or the conscience is prompting them, I need to turn off the light before I leave the bathroom. I need to help clear the table when I leave the kitchen. I need to keep my hands to myself. You know, this sense of obligation is so powerful. We use it when we're dealing with children with ADHD, because a sense of obligation helps them deal with the impulses that they have many times, or to focus on what they're doing. Obligation is strategic, and that is an internal motivation inside of the heart. So we build that through training children with a sense of obligation is going to be a key element here in order to prompt them internally. Now, just let me amplify this a little bit on a theoretical level. Remember, every person has a heart. And the heart, the Bible says, is desperately wicked above all things. It has this tendency to go astray. But God has placed two things within the human heart that keep it going in the right direction. One of those things is the conscience, the sense of duty, or the sense of guilt, or whatever it is that happens inside the conscience is really powerful in the life of a child to keep them going in the right direction. The other one is the Holy Spirit. When the Holy Spirit is present inside of a child's life, he's speaking and he's directing traffic, and he's saying, I don't think you should do that. Or he's informing us and saying, good job. And so we have this internal motivation. So our goal in that particular book is to take the conscience and understand it, and spiritual development, and know how to develop that in a child in order to build internal motivation, so children can see what needs to be done and do it without being asked. So children can do the right thing without having to be monitored every moment. Now that takes training. And so we're going to help children in some strategic ways to be trained to do that. But we have to understand the mentality behind it, that there's this heart that exists, and children need to be able to recognize what's going on inside the heart, and that'll build this internal motivation for them.
I love it. And what you're saying is so powerful. And I love that. Yes, we do have, it's an interesting thing being a human being, because, you know, there's this one part of us that's like, let's go over here and just be wild and crazy. And then there's this other part, this piece of us and the Holy Spirit is saying, oh, actually, if you really want to be happy, let's go over here and do this, you know, and you see this sometimes in children. But what I have experienced is, especially younger children, they have such an intense, our experience has been, they have such an intense desire to want to do good and to want to please mom and dad. And there's this connection there. And I think that the desire to please mom and dad really is an extension of a desire to want to please Heavenly Father. You know, we just want to look to what's good, and we want to feel that. So I'm interested to hear your insights on how to help children, and maybe let's even push that up a little further and go to a teenager who, well, we're just starting this process and they're a little on the wayward side, or a little, you know, maybe they've drifted over here to this other side a little bit. And how to get them to better understand how to listen to that Holy Spirit, you know, some call it the still small voice, that guiding traffic, and then to discipline themselves to respond to it. What's been your experience on helping kids to do that?
All right, so let's get practical. I've shared with you some theory about internal motivation, but let me give you a very specific practical tool you can use with teens or even younger children. We call it the 3 C's: cue, conscience, and character. Those are the 3 C's. Cues, well, let's ask the question. You get up in the morning as a parent and you say to your child, get off the iPad. You need to go and make your bed. And so he makes his bed and he gets back on the iPad. And you say, you need to go and get dressed. And he gets back on the iPad after he gets dressed. And he's obeying, he's doing what you're telling him to do, but he's not staying on track himself. He doesn't have this sense of obligation. So one of the things that we do is we decide, what are the cues? I mean, parents have cues. They're trying to be responsible here. And so their cues are the to-do list and the clock. Well, let's transfer the cues to the child. This is going to take some training, But even young children can learn cues. A 3-year-old who's done playing with toys can learn to put the toys away. The cue is what? I'm done with this toy. I'm going to play something else. Oh, you're done with the toy? And so we don't say, now clean up the toys. We say, oh, you're done with that toy? We're drawing attention to the cue. Or, oh, you're leaving the bathroom. And so the cue is, I'm leaving the bathroom. So the child will, oh yeah, I'm leaving the bathroom. I need to make sure the toilet's flush and the lights turned off.
Right.
Or with the teenager to say, oh, you're leaving the table, or we're just helping them understand the cues. If we help kids understand the cues, then that's going to be the first step in obligation. But that takes training now. So parents parent differently now. Instead of saying in the morning, get your backpack, get your teeth brushed, instead of doing all of those things, now the parent is saying, bring me your list, report back, look at the time. And so the parent now is having the child focus on the cues in order to move them to the next step. This next step is the conscience. And this is what we're talking about in this book, Motivate Your Child, internal motivation. So the conscience is this internal thing inside of our hearts that right and wrong, and it needs to be trained. What is the right way to leave the bathroom in your house? What is the right way to leave the table in your home? What is the right way to handle sibling conflict in the home? So that takes training. So now we've got cues that trigger the right way. And then as children practice this, and of course, each one of these steps require training, but we guide our training in a way that's touching children on a deeper level, not just with behavioral rewards. Now we're building the character that's needed in the child's life, the character qualities of diligence, knowing how to work hard, the character quality of perseverance, knowing how to persevere or hang in there even after I feel like quitting, the character quality of thoroughness, which is attention to detail. By the way, those are the 3 qualities we're using with children with ADHD. We're trying to help them focus. Those are the same 3 qualities we use with piano practicing. That you're not going to be a great musician maybe someday, but that's not what we're working on. We're working on character development. And those are just 3 of many qualities that we're trying to target. So you've got the cue, the conscience, and the character. Those 3 C's are just a technique now. Remember, tie it back to the heart, tie it back to this biblical parenting that we're trying to look at here. And that one technique of many techniques, that just one technique will guide children in a positive direction.
Awesome. So amazing. And what I love about it is that, again, I'm just thinking about our experience in raising our children and in helping other parents. And God has blessed you with an amazing brain to articulate and to quantify and to systematize so many of this. It's just beautiful. And so I'm trying to think, well, gosh, what did we do there? And, one of the things that I have loved is Margie has always said, well, you have this choice and, it's A or B and it's your life. Right. So I'm not going to live your life for you. We lived in a lot of rental homes because we've moved around a bunch through our married life. I got a bit of a moving bug. And so we rent a lot of homes, and landlords will often say to us, like, yeah, well, renters typically trash the place because they don't feel any ownership. And we've talked with our children and said, even if we don't have ownership, we live here. like we live with the consequences. If we leave a big mess or spill something on the carpet or put a hole in the wall or whatever, we have to live with those consequences. And do you want to live like that? No? Okay, then we're going to take care of this place like it's ours.
Good. Yeah.
And One of the things that's been interesting to us as parents, and especially with our large family, what we've noticed is the incredible diversity and range of personalities and thought processes and approaches and character that our children come to us with. It's like, wow, well, I mean, yes, there are some family traits there, but gosh, that is a totally unique human being. And just when we figured out parenting with the first one, the second one came along.
Yeah.
and then the next one came, I seem to recall you doing some teaching and training on this idea about individuality and the uniqueness of each child. And I wondered if you could speak to that for just a moment, because I think that anytime, first of all, a lot of times parents step into parenting, I think, with an idea of like, well, I know myself and I've kind of gotten to know my spouse. And so this child, like, I'm going to have a sense of how to interact with them. And then all of a sudden the child turns out to be like this totally unique, different human being. And then they're like, oh boy, well, now what do I do? Or maybe they came from a family of all girls and they get boys, or vice versa, right? So what are your insights on how a parent can really see the child as an individual and not just as a, like as a, they're the caretaker of this child, and they just have to get them off to school and be done with it, and I'm not sure how to articulate it, but a lot of times we see parents not quite sure how to get a grip on, because one more thing is I hear parents say all the time, like, I raised them all the same, but look, like, why did this one turn out that way and this one turn out that way? And my thought is always, well, because you raised them all the same. You shouldn't. So can you talk a little bit about that individuality for each child and how parents can address that?
Yes. So let me first say that sometimes children don't turn out as well as we'd like, and we can't blame that all on the parents.
Exactly.
Often, children all make their own choices, and so we have to have a lot of grace in parenting. The people who know the most about parenting are the ones who don't have any kids. So you really need to be careful and humble about looking at another family. If you have an easy child, it's very tempting to say, I got this thing down. Why can't the rest of you get this down? And so let me say this. Every child has a heart. And the heart is this complex place that's hard to understand. In fact, the Bible talks about it as being a deep waters, but a man of understanding draws it out. So we really have to study our child. And one of the tools that we offer at the National Center for Biblical Parenting is an assessment tool where you can assess the heart of a child. The heart really are these tendencies, these patterns that children have. That's how Jesus taught us about the heart. He says it's out of the heart that the mouth speaks. He says the heart is like this trunk of the tree and the behavior is the fruit of the tree. Yeah. So if you want to understand the heart, then you're going to have to do a little bit of digging, and you can tell sometimes by the fruit what's going on inside of the heart of a child. So we measure 10 different areas in a child's life. It's called the Child Behavior Inventory. It's free. Anybody can go to our website. They answer these questions. It's an Excel spreadsheet. It automatically scores it on a graph. And we see then what challenges or unique things about this child that need to be addressed. So when we come to sibling conflict, for example, it's very important that parents treat children as individuals, not as a herd. And so when you've got 2 children or 10 children or whatever you've got, then it's tempting to say, kids all come to dinner. And I say, look, if you're having a problem with competition and comparison in your home, then you're going to want to break that down. Some parents say, well, if I buy shoes for Jimmy, I better buy shoes for Susie so I can be fair. This idea of fairness means equal is a lie. And it's what causes anger in a lot of children, because the children point at their sibling and say, well, look what he got, or look what she got. And I should be able to do more than that, or I should be able to have this. That competition and comparison is dangerous. That's not, God doesn't treat us all equally.
Yeah.
Look at the Bible. He gives everybody a spiritual gift that's different. If you look at the parables, some got 5, some got 2, some got 1 talent. And there's no statement in there, oh, well, how come I didn't get 5?
Right.
That person, because I got 2 and he got 1. No, there's not that kind of an idea here.
But in fact, just to interject there's actually the opposite, where the parable of the workers, they start in the morning, in the afternoon, in the evening, and he pays them all, and they start whining. He's like, well, I had a deal with you. That was your deal. Like, just chill.
Well, and
he didn't say it quite like
the
that.
Old and the New Testament, if God is the ultimate parent and his word is his parenting handbook, then he parented people in the Old Testament a little differently than he did in the New,
Right.
My
So I
favorite
didn't mean to interrupt you. Keep going. So I just
favorite
thought,
story in this is the one at the end of the Gospel of John, where Peter is talking to Jesus, and Jesus is telling Peter how he's going to die. And Peter says, "What about him?" pointing at John.
yeah, right.
And Jesus says, "What is it to you if I let him remain until I come again?"
Right.
The point is, you worry about your relationship with me. Don't compare yourself to someone else. God is working with every one of us in a unique and special fashion. That's really what children want. They want to be treated uniquely and special. That's what we need to do to break down this competition and comparison that exists. So one of the things we can do here to break that down is not to try to be fair in the sense of equal. Fair means equal is a lie. It's not how life happens. And we want to make sure that children understand that, because if you just focus on fairness, you're continually angry, because life isn't fair. We got all these problems that come. So as parents, we have to strategically break down that misbelief that children often have. Remember, beliefs are inside of the heart, and it's out of the heart that comes these behaviors. So much of our work is changing what children believe. And we can do that in a relatively short period of time with many children. Our program only lasts 8 weeks, our coaching program.
Yeah.
And we see major changes take place in the 8 weeks. Sometimes my coaches say, how long should we expect this to take place? And my answer is, if you're not seeing change in week 1, something's wrong. Either you're not explaining it well, or the parents are not explaining it to the children well, or something's going on here that we need to address here. So we should see change pretty quickly when we're using a heart-based approach.
Yeah. Amazing.
That's amazing.
So again, just looking at the time here, I have this thought about, you've got this assessment that helps parents to dig a little bit deeper and to understand that trunk and not just see the fruit on the tree. And, I'm wondering about if you have any other practical insights that you can share about how parents can see and recognize and maybe, quantify or address some of those unique individual differences in the child. And then I love what you just said about, and I jotted down here, it's like, well, each child wants to feel unique and special. And just wondering about your insights on how to communicate that effectively to the child so that they do begin to shift that behavior.
All right, let's deal with your first question about this. Let's do some more assessment. You can use our assessment tool, but when a parent comes to us and says, "I'm having trouble with my kids or my child, he's angry," and so I say, "Okay, here's what we're going to do for your child," and you have to have a different plan for every one of your kids.
Yeah.
God has a different plan for each one of us. He's moving us from point A to point B in the sanctification process. We're going to create a point A and a point B for your child. So here's what you do. And we give them exact steps. I'm going to refer to it another book here, because this is our action plan book that has 12 chapters in it that shows parents how to do exactly what I'm telling you to do. Number 1, create a list of all the problems this child has. You never show this to the child, but it helps you focus on what the problems are. Then you can group those around different categories. How similar are these? And you end up finding, well, they all kind of fall into similar categories here.
Yeah.
Then we ask the question, and that in itself is encouraging. Instead of having 50 problems now we have 4 or 5 groups of problems that we can resolve. Now we're going to choose a heart quality or a character quality that we're going to work toward. And as we work toward that, we're going to see this point A problem decrease. If a child has a problem with anger, we're going to work on more emotional flexibility, or we're going to work on self-control, or we're going to work on peace. We're going to work on giving up your agenda. Whatever we're going to work on here at point B is going to help point A reduce. If the problem is meanness and sarcasm and disrespect, then we're going to work on maybe honor. We're going to work on love. We're going to work on treating people differently. Now, this one idea transforms the way parents think, because now they're moving from "Stop it, I can't believe you're doing this," and correction all the time. Now they're moving toward this goal of, I'm going to work towards something. It makes the parenting positive. You can then engage the child, and the child hopefully is going to embrace this new movement toward where they need to be. Parents then can use tools like coaching and teaching and training to move in a direction instead of just focusing on the correction they often use. So there's a very systematic way that we help parents address their children, but they have to do some work here to find out what unique qualities does God want to develop in their lives. And then we develop a very unique and personalized plan. So that's what our coaches do. with individualized parents so that parents say, well, I got 3 kids. I can't just deal with one. I say, no. We're going to deal with one child. You choose whichever one you want. We're going to think about changing that one child's life because you can't treat them all the same. Let's work on one, learn how to work with this one. And then you'll take those same principles and go to child number 2 or child number 3 and bring about the same kind of heart training that needs to take place.
Yeah. And it's the same principles, not the same plan. I really want to emphasize that because it's so incredible what you're sharing here. I remember one of your story reminds me of one of our children, very strong-willed. He was child number 5, and so he's put in the middle of these other strong-willed siblings, and and he's down at the caboose at the time, and he was just fit to be tied. I mean, he had so much energy. He just wanted to be
in charge and the leader, and couldn't.
Yeah, and so Margie came up with this marvelous idea. It's like, okay, when he got to be, how old was he? 5
or 6?
6?
Yeah.
Margie put him in charge of changing all the diapers of the younger children. So we had 3 in diapers at the time. So it was like, so you got to figure out 5 or 6. And he was in charge of laundry.
Yeah. And so he got to tell everybody, bring me your laundry. And here's, he was in charge of that and he loved it. He finally got to let his personality shine, and it just greatly reduced a lot of the anger and the tension and the frustration that he was feeling inside, because we saw him as a unique individual, not just the herd.
Yeah.
I love that. That's parenting to a child's strengths, which are so valuable.
Yeah. So valuable. Okay. One last significant question here for you. I want to just kind of shift attention from the training the child to looking at your insights on training the parent. So I do want to acknowledge here, Dr. Scott, I love your grace to parents. I did not come into parenting with any kind of a manual or handbook. I came from a fairly dysfunctional family, and so I had all kinds of weird ideas about lots of different stuff. And I needed a lot of grace because I still make a lot of mistakes. So I want to preface this next question with that, is that, man, the Lord's working with us too, and he's patient with us, and he compensates for a lot of stuff. I mean, Christ's whole mission was to help that compensation process to sanctify us through his work, because he knew we weren't going to be perfect. We were going to mess this up at some point, right?
That's right.
So, having a sense of how to train the parents, and I just wonder what your insights are about how to help nurture them from that point A to point B, so that they're willing to do the work with their child. They're willing to, make the effort, to make the plans, to individualize, to, do some of these things that we've talked about, to look at the heart as opposed to just behavior sets. And what's been your experience in working with so many parents through the years?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's some parents who just aren't willing to change.
Sure.
There's some parents that are just too busy. They don't have time to parent. There are other parents who, they're doing all kinds of good things with their kids. And we affirm them. We say, you are doing a lot of good things. If this particular child needs some different good things, and we can show you what those different good things are, if you'd like. Right. So the ones who are interested in growing and making some change are the ones that do the best in our programs. Sure. But we don't focus on the parent and say, here's how you can become a better parent. We don't do that. What we say is, let's focus on your child. Where does your child need to go? And we have in the coaching program, we have this, where do you want to go worksheet? The question we're asking is, what does God want this child to change in their hearts and lives? Now, as soon as we identify that quality, or those qualities that child needs to be more responsible or disciple of Christ, or more mature, or whatever it might be, then we appeal to the fact that the parents love this child. If you love your child, you're going to want to do these things for this child. We don't tell the parent they have to change, but because they love their kids and they see the problem, and now they see the solution that needs to take place, are willing to adjust the way they work with the child. They're willing to change some of the formats or the techniques or even the big principles that this particular child needs. So when we introduce those things, it's for the child's benefit. And then after a little bit of time here, parents are often saying, wow, I'm changing here. And we say, oh, that's great. Or more valuable is when parents say to us, I need this just as much as my kids do. These plans about anger management and about responsibility and obligation and procrastination, all those things that we teach. Parents are saying, I need this too. And we're saying, oh, really? Good.
Really? Wow.
Family is this laboratory for growth. So let's all learn here and just share that with your kids. Hey, I'm learning this too. I'm learning how to manage my anger. We're growing together. There's a humility we come to with our families that I think is strategic and important.
Awesome.
I would say inspired, but maybe more so, or genius, but maybe more so inspired. I mean, a lot of times if we confront the parent directly, I mean, I felt this myself. I've seen behavior set in my children, looked in the mirror and I've been like, you're the problem, you need to change. And then immediately I feel a sense of pride and like arrogance, right? And be like, well, no, I don't need to change. And so I kind of bristle a little bit, and then I got to humble myself and be like, oh yeah, okay, we're going to work on this a little bit. And I love your approach. And I think what I would say to all of our listeners is that, you know what, number one, being kind and graceful and patient with yourself, the way Christ is with us, is so important. Number two, I would say that as we shift the focus away from ourselves, I mean, Christ clearly taught that he that will lose himself shall find himself. And as we shift away from this, our world tends to be this obsessive, self-indulgent environment where it's like, it's all about me and it's about how I'm feeling. And it's about, so many people wake up in the day and they're like, do I feel good enough to go to work or to be nice to my kids or do this? And Margie and I have often said, well, it's not really about you. And I know as a simple example on this, years and years ago when I started in my career as a freelance copywriter, I was just terrified because I didn't have experience, I didn't have clients, I didn't have any branding, no recognition. I had all these deficits. And while I focused on those deficits and on myself, I had a lot of problems getting clients. And when I shifted that and said, okay, actually the system I'm using is proven, I'm just going to put trust in that system. And then I'm going to be okay. And I'm going to focus on the clients. Like, what do they need and how can I serve them? And then I couldn't stop clients from coming. Yes. And I see what you're doing with this, Scott, and it's you're making that same shift in the parents' minds. Like, let's stop thinking about ourselves. Let's think about our children, and we will grow in the process. We'll find ourselves in that loss of self.
Yes. I just think that, I just love what I do. I just got to tell you, this is so fun for me. I not only train coaches, but I have my own coaches, my own clients that I take on myself. And I just love it. I just love being a part of families' lives. I tell my wife, now week one's always the scariest for me and with my clients because you hear all of the problems in this family. You're going, oh no, God, what are you going to do here? Right. My coaches often, when they are done with week one, they say, I think I'm way over my head. And I say to them, that's how I feel every time we're in week one.
Yeah.
When I hear these things about a family, I'm way over my head. This isn't about me. I'm not the hero in this story. God's the hero. The family's the hero. And just give them the truth and watch God work. Week 2 is my favorite week in the whole 8-week program because in week 2, we hear these amazing changes that are starting to take place in this family. It's just a little bit of change seems like a miracle in the lives of some of these families. When I just got married, which was 45 years ago, my wife and I got married. We were guided or counseled to not get a TV for our first year. So we didn't get a TV. And after that, we decided, you know what? We're having so much fun. We're not going to get a TV ever. So we raised all our children and without a TV. And, there's this reality TV that's on TV now, but I don't need to watch that. If I want to change the channel, I just take on another client because I see God's grace working firsthand in the lives of people. I feel like I'm sitting at the Sea of Galilee while the disciples are passing out the bread. Or maybe I feel like I'm a disciple there. Well, because it's not about me. It's about that guy behind me there, Jesus Christ. He's making the changes here. He's doing the miracle. I just get to hand out the bread. And so it's so exciting to watch families change. And the coaches just get so excited in the training. They can hardly wait to get out there and and influence more families. One family at a time, we're going to help them understand these biblical principles and see changes take place in even the most difficult children.
I love it. So beautiful.
Wonderful. What a great work you're doing.
It's awesome.
It's amazing.
And what a great work God's doing through you is a better way to say that.
Yes, that's right.
So I think we're kind of at the end of our interview this time, and maybe we have a follow-up at some point, but I would love to direct our audience, our online family, to more of your stuff. So I know that they can go to biblical parenting. I think it's .org or .com. I'm sorry, I don't remember off the top of my head.
I own both of them. They both go to biblicalparenting.org. So I'd start there because that's our main. We have 7 websites, but let's just start there because that'll direct you to other ones.
Okay.
When you go to biblicalparenting.org, you can sign up for free email parenting tips. You can get those right away. I have a new ebook that's out. You can find.
Tell us about the ebook because I was so impressed by the ebooks. Share with us a little bit about that.
All right, this is an ebook that's entitled "This: Equipping Children to Self-Regulate Emotions." So in this ebook, which is free right now, you can download it from my website, and you can get some insight into what this looks like to understand what the heart is, what emotions are all about, and then some practical ideas of moving in some directions to help children self-regulate their emotions. There's a lot of misunderstanding about this issue, and so we bring several principles into this picture that helps parents strategically to be able to address this. All the things that we've talked about today, you can find at biblicalparenting.org and search there. Especially look at if you want to find things fast on my website, go down to the site map at the bottom.
At the bottom, yeah. Cool.
Yeah, that's what I put there for myself. So I can say, oh yeah, there's 500 pages in this website. So I can go down to the bottom and find the heart work material or find the child behavior inventory or find the coaching program. It's all there at the bottom. And that'll take you to links to the other websites or even on that website to find what you want.
Awesome. I love it.
Wow.
So for anyone listening, we strongly, ! Bold caps, strongly encourage, go to this biblicalparenting.org and start by downloading the book, right? Grab the ebook. It's free, like Scott said, and grab that and then start immersing yourself in this because, what I'm hearing is, if Margie and I, and this will sound braggadocious, but if Margie and I, who have been tutored and mentored by the Lord, for our 28 years of marriage and raising our 11 children, have gleaned enormous amount of wisdom from Scott, it's probable that everybody could. And so we really encourage you to go and check it out and dive into it and see how the Lord can bless you and your family and your children through this process and the structure that Scott has put together. So Scott, what a joy this has been. Thank you for your insights, your generosity of your time and your wisdom. We really, really appreciate it. And how grateful we are to God for inspiring you so many years ago in Hawaii to work with those kids and pull those 2 other experts together and start down this journey. And for the courage of being faithful through it for 45 plus years of your life. It's just incredible. Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Josh and Margie. I just appreciate your ministry, and I just wish you the best as you bless families. This has been a fun interview for me. I get excited about I'm grateful for what you're doing as well.
So great. All right. Take care, and we'll talk to you again another time.
Thank you.
All right. God bless you guys.
God bless. Okay. Bye now. Okay. Scott. Wow.
That was amazing.
When I grow up, I want to be cool like you, man. That was awesome. So thank you.
Hey, look, when you post this somewhere, if you send me the links, I'll put it out on social media so that people can be driven to your site and whatever's going on.
Yeah. So let me explain a little bit about what we kind of have in store for that. So we take our interviews and then we do a week-long dedicated promotion of that. We run ads. We do a bunch of social media stuff, and then we'll also create resources for you and your team, quotes that we'll pull from this. And so meme cards, if you want to create those, or a summary and executive, bullet points of key things. We'll just create all that stuff for you and give it to you. And then you can use it however you want.
If you give it to us, be sure to give it to us a few weeks in advance, because we have a social media schedule. And the people who manage that are, I look over what they're doing every week, and so give me in some advance time so that we'll just plug it all in, and we're looking for all kinds of things that we can put into social media. So this would be great. Let's do it.
Okay, great. So I think we are, I don't remember, I'd have to ask my team, but I think that this release of this is probably 3 to 6 weeks out. Again, I'll have to look at my calendar, but we'll notify you well in advance. So
good. Just let us know. Okay.
Cool. you, Scott.
All
Sure
right.
appreciate it, buddy.
Thank you so much.
right.
Take
Goodbye
care. God bless again. Thank you.
All right.
Uh,
Take care now. Bye-bye.